Right, year 13. I'm going to go through gene probes and electrophoresis. Really killing two birds with one stone. So gene probes are amazing. It's how you can find if you possess a certain allele of a gene. So every baby in this country, when they're born, they have blood taken from the heel. It's a heel prick test, and they screen them for like a dozen genetic disorders using this technique. So they start by extracting the DNA from a cell. That's easy. You just need detergent, so they can get the DNA out. And obviously, there's 23 pairs of chromosomes per cell. There's about 2 meters of DNA in a cell, and therefore, if I'm trying to find a certain gene somewhere, and I need to get something to that gene, I need to kind of get it all organized into short pieces. So we cut it into pieces. And it's, can you think of an enzyme that I can use that will cut the DNA into fragments? Some kind of enzyme we've met previously. Yeah, chopping those phosphodester bonds. Maybe a restriction endonuclease. That's exactly what we use. So it's cut into pieces. And here you can see that I've got a random arrangement of sizes. And the aim now is to organize these pieces of DNA into order of sizes so that I can get called a gene probe to the DNA to find this potentially defective allele. So yeah, we use a restriction enzyme to cut the DNA into small pieces. And then we will load it into this machine. And I'm going to go through this in bits, and there's a file that you can download that you can fill in as we go, or you can take it all in and make a summary for yourselves. But this is it's called agarose gel. There's a well cut into it where we put our sample and a blue dye. It's a bit like doing electrolysis. It's called electrophoresis. So I've got a positive electrode here, and the DNA moves through the gel, so does the dye, and it migrates towards the positive. And it all moves because the DNA must have a negative charge. And the reason why it has a negative charge is because it's made of a negative ion in its backbone. It's got phosphate ions. So again, you can fill this in as we go, or pause it, or do whatever you like. So yeah, a well is cut into the agarose gel, which is then placed in a bath. So there's our well. This is agarose gel. It's just a gel like agar gel, just very similar, good solid gel. It's surrounded by a conducting buffer, and we have a positive electrode here, the anode, and a negative one, the cathode there. We then load up the well, so you have to poke a pipette through the buffer and put it into the well. So that now contains digested DNA, fragments of different lengths, and a dye molecule. And then we apply a current, not a current, otherwise you put it like dried fruit on that electrode. So yeah, this is the positive, and this one here is the negative. And then the result. So once the blue dye gets towards the end, you turn the current off. Okay, and therefore these are the DNA fragments. They'd be invisible, and yeah, they vary in length. The small ones move, they move faster. There's less resistance to move. It's like running through water. If you've got thin legs, you can run through knee-high water quickly. If you're wearing cricket pads, you move through slower. So you need to know that small fragments move the fastest, not the furthest. They move the furthest in a set time period. They move the fastest. So if this is our gel viewed kind of vertically now, if that's the smallest piece of DNA, which is the well? Is it this one here or this one here? Well, it's this one here because small pieces move further. So yeah, that's the longest piece. That's where you'll find the longest pieces. That's where you find the medium-sized pieces. That's where you find the slightly smaller than medium-sized pieces of DNA, and that's where you find the not quite small, but smaller and slightly smaller than medium-sized pieces of DNA. You get a range of sizes of DNA in the gel. All of it's invisible, and it's inside jelly. I need to get a probe to it. I need to get it out of the jelly, which is now the next step. I want to add a chemical that turns DNA from double-stranded into single-stranded. So there's double-stranded, and I want to add something to make it single-stranded. I could heat it to 95 degrees C, like in PCR, to break the hydrogen bonds. However, that would melt the gel, and I'd lose my organisation. Enzymes are no use, so we use a chemical method, and we just use sodium hydroxide. And we'll summarise this in a minute. So this is the gel side on. It's got DNA inside it. It's single-stranded now, and we apply a nylon membrane or a nylon filter to it. You pack the top with like paper towels, and it draws the DNA onto the nylon membrane. I think, like wear a nylon shirt and you get static, hence, the sugar phosphate backbones like to stick to nylon, so it kind of draws it out of the gel. So just in summary, we add sodium hydroxide, so we replace the buffer with that, and we go from double-stranded DNA to single-stranded DNA. So I've exposed the code. Then we pop the nylon filter on top. It's called Southern blotting, named after Mr. Southern. It's placed on top. We put blotting paper on top, and that draws the DNA fragments onto the nylon with like the code like sticking out into space with the sugar phosphate backbone attached to the nylon. And then that's held on with like static. So then you bake it in an oven, which like the sugar phosphate backbone can like sticks into the nylon, and the bases stick off. So that's like a permanent way of getting the DNA fragments. Then we add the probe, and we'll see what a probe is. So the nylon filter is placed in a bath with radioactive gene probes. So you have to do this carefully because it's radioactive and damage the DNA. So yeah, probes are added. And this is my way of showing how the probe attaches. So this is the normal DNA. So this is the normal sugar phosphate backbone, and this is the code. So in this area here would be the nylon. So the code is sticking off, and in comes a gene probe. Okay, it's got a different coloured backbone. It's purple to show that it's made of radioactive phosphorus, not normal phosphorus, and its sequence is complementary. I've said the word, hooray, it's been a few days. It's complementary to the sequence on the actual DNA, and therefore they hybridize, or I could say anneal or form hydrogen bonds. Okay. If that code wasn't complementary, it wouldn't stick. These probes are longer than I'm showing here, so that you get high specificity. So this is kind of like the notes version, and it's just knowing that what a gene probe is. It's a short length of single-stranded DNA. It's got radioactive phosphorus in its sugar phosphate backbone, and it can hybridize to a target complementary sequence. And you can see the hydrogen bonds have formed between it. So it's held in place now. Oops, wait a minute. I should have deleted that. So this top picture is showing our nylon. These are the little bits of DNA that are attached, and if you just look really closely there, you can see there's a gene probe attached, and therefore, this is then washed to remove unbound gene probes. Because remember, DNA, the sugar phosphate backbone, likes to stick to nylon. It could just stick onto the nylon, so we wash it to remove any that just stuck on with static, and to leave the ones that are attached with hydrogen bonds. So by giving it a wash, it prevents a false positive result. And a false positive result can be a nightmare. It might mean that you are, probing a fetus to see if it's got a genetic condition to decide on abortion or not. And a false positive would mean you'd be facing an abortion of a potentially healthy fetus. If you washed it too much, it might give a false negative, which again, we don't want a negative, and therefore they have machines that wash this, that follow a certain protocol. They don't rely on us washing it under a tap. I then need to visualize this. Remember, none of this is visible to the naked eye. The radioactivity is so minute here as well that we have to detect it over a long period of time. And you did a bit of this when you did about flow and movements and proof for the mass flow hypothesis. So we do something called autoradiography, where we put X-ray film on top, like all photographic film, and put into a light-proof box. You leave it for 48 hours, and then the radiation from the gene probe will expose the film in that area. And when you develop it, you get this fogged area. So this is our X-ray film. This is a fogged area, and that indicates the presence of a gene probe. And therefore, a positive test for the allele being screened for. So yeah, there's our nylon. Pop on the X-ray film, put it in a box, and that's the result. It's quite a boring result, but there's one blob here, and that blob, signifies defective allele, and therefore this person has got one defective allele. Therefore, they are heterozygous for this gene being Pro4, because if they were homozygous, they'd have two little bands on here, unless the bands are on exactly the same size fragments, which shouldn't normally happen, but it may happen by chance. Remember, chromosomes are in pairs, homologous pairs. They'll be cut by the enzymes like between genes in these VNTR areas, and therefore it's highly unlikely that you'll get the same size fragment containing a gene, because VNTRs differ massively between people. So yeah, this person's got one band here. So if it was a dominant allele disease, that's a positive test. You're going to suffer from the disease. If we were screening for cystic fibrosis, well, this person would be a carrier for cystic fibrosis, but they wouldn't be a sufferer because there's not two bands. But however, we probably have to monitor them to see, because I guess they could be homozygous and therefore a sufferer. It's just that the DNA fragments are the same length. And we'll worry about that another time. Take care. Stop recording.